Yes, folks, it's that time of the week where we join Len Clark live from the United States to look back on Notre Dame's game last night. Len, welcome to the programme.
Hi, Declan. There's nothing like a college football Saturday and waking up on a Sunday knowing that you're 4-0.
Indeed, and what a performance from the Fighting Irish. They fell 3-zip down, but responded with four tries in the first half. Quarterback. Touchdowns.
That's the first time that Notre Dame has trailed all season long, but as you said, a new quarterback in the Notre Dame starting lineup. Sophomore redshirt Ian Book got the start over Brandon Wimbush. The coaching staff thought that Wimbush was just becoming more one-dimensional, running the ball very effectively, but the passing game was suffering. Ian Book is the full package. They started him. He threw for a career-high 325 yards yesterday, threw for 2 touchdowns, ran for 3, and Notre Dame dominated Wake Forest by winning the game yesterday 56-27.
And that's the highest points amassed in a single game by Notre Dame since 2015.
It's been a while since Notre Dame has put a lot of points on the board, but it doesn't matter as long as they get the W in the win column. They did that yesterday, 4-0 going into a big game next Saturday against Stanford. But it was a game where Notre Dame really needed to kind of fire on all cylinders, and they executed that in all facets of the game. But yesterday, a very hot day in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Game time temperature about 80 degrees, 80, 90 degrees. But on the field, Declan, over 130 degrees or about 54 degrees Celsius on the playing field. And that took a lot out of the Notre Dame defense. But once again, we go back to the conditioning. They were ready to play 4 quarters yesterday.
Yeah, and they gave up so few points as well.
Well, they gave up some points later on in the game. They gave up 27, which is a little bit more than they have been giving up. But the defense played very sound, and they're going to need that. It was a confidence-building game. And so, as we said, a big game next week against Stanford. Stanford rated number 7 in the country, but they will probably flip-flop with Notre Dame. Notre Dame currently 8. I would project that Notre Dame would jump up to about number 6 in the country. Last night, Stanford won in overtime against Oregon, and that was a unique game. Stanford got a fumble with about a minute remaining, went down the field, kicked the field goal with the buzzer to tie the game, and then won it in overtime. And so another opponent on Notre Dame's schedule, Virginia Tech, lost to unranked Old Dominion, an in-state school. They were rated number 13 in the country. So right now, taking a look at the schedule and the way the teams are playing, Notre Dame is looking pretty confident right now of running the table up until later part of October.
What about this new quarterback? Do you think he's going to get the start next week against Stanford?
I think you have to, the way that he played against Wake Forest, because they also need that two-dimensional game, just not running the game. I would expect to see Brandon Wimbush come into the game next week in certain situations. Mm-hmm. It's like Ian Book has been doing in the first 3 games where he was brought in around the red zone. And what the red zone is that in American football it's 100 yards long. So when a team gets inside the 20-yard line of the opposition, that's when Ian Book was coming in, and they had an offensive package for him. Because he is so versatile, he can run the option, which is keeping the ball, throwing the ball, or handing the ball off to a receiver. But I would say, Declan, going into the Stanford game, you got to dance with the person you brought to the dance, and they brought Ian Book to the dance yesterday. So look for Ian Book to be the starting quarterback, probably for the next couple of 5 games. Yeah,
because, I mean, what a start to the season for him. I mean, there's some impressive numbers.
Impressive numbers, as I said, a career high, but the important thing is that he hit 9 different receivers with passes. And before, under Brandon Wimbush, once again, going back to the word one-dimensional, he was hitting 3 or 4 of them. Alize Mack, the tight end, caught 6 of those passes yesterday. And then Ian Book throwing 2 touchdown passes, one to tight end Brock Wright, his first career touchdown, and a second one going to Chase Claypool, a big receiver out of British Columbia in Canada who is playing football for the Irish. But a very good offensive package put on the field yesterday, and a lot of sigh of relief, if you will, because Notre Dame knows that they do have a quarterback they can count on right now.
Just as a broad principle, do you tend to see, significant small numbers of players coming down from Canada to play college football?
Well, you're starting to see more and more. Canada, they play Canadian football, and you're very familiar with that.
Indeed, yeah.
But Chase Claypool was playing American football. In certain provinces, they do play the American-style football. And even if you take a look at the NFL rosters, I know that they're getting a lot of big offensive linemen and defensive linemen out of the provinces. I know in the Chicago Bears in my area that they've got a player out of Alberta. And listen, you're going to go where you can find the talent. So if they can find some rugby players in Ireland that can play American football, or going down to New Zealand to see these guys who could do the hooker dance in addition to play American football, you're going to see that. But you do see a lot of international players as specialists. A lot of kickers have been coming from around the world. And I know yesterday in watching a football game, Indiana University has a punter out of Australia.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, there was a guy who played soccer here in Ireland, got a gig in the NFL in the late 70s. His name was Con O'Donoghue, and he got a gig as a kicker.
And so if you can kind of keep us on tabs of the individuals who can bring these skills, hopefully we'll get them over to the University of Notre Dame to make a difference down the road.
Okay. I actually, on the point that you were making about some schools in Canada playing American football, we actually, the last time I was at a Shamrock Bowl earlier in the year, there was a school from Manitoba came over here to play American football games against some of the local teams here. And Manitoba would be sort of Midwest to Western, and that tends to be where the schools play American football, in addition to the ones that play Canadian football. That tends to be in the Western provinces, where indeed in some parts, Canadian football is the big summer game there because it's either hockey or Canadian football.
That's right. It's still tough for me to start watching football in the summer, especially with the heat. But it's been it's been an enjoyment for me watching Canadian football. The rules are a little bit different, but then you can see the athleticism. And once these players are known, like Chase Claypool out of British Columbia, is 6'4", 245 pounds. He's a big target as a wide receiver and a very athletic individual. And yesterday getting a big touchdown against Wake Forest to help the Irish get that victory.
And the great thing about his situation is if he doesnn't get drafted in the NFL, he sure will in the CFL. He's got options. He's got options.
Home country and play, but no, he is definitely an NFL prospect and will be gobbled up by one of the NFL teams. And that's the one thing about these Notre Dame receivers. They're very tall. That's the only criticism on Ian Book, is that Ian is about 5'11", not as tall as Brandon Wimbush, and that's been some of the things that individuals have said have kind of kept him back. But with the performance yesterday, throwing the football, running the football, and just managing the team, Notre Dame has found their quarterback to lead them.
And if he has good protection and solid defense, that shouldn't be a problem.
That's right. I guess after the game, you go up and you thank those offensive linemen, saying,
"Sure,
hey, thanks
absolutely.
for keeping the defense off of me." And because Ian was not, I don't believe he was really sacked yesterday because the offensive line has been struggling the past couple of games.
But they held up yesterday.
They sure did yesterday, and the defense, as I said, especially with that heat, lasted 4 quarters. And this afternoon we'll get an update on any potential injuries. But right now, everything looks positive going into the Stanford game next week.
So from the point of view of sort of adjusting to climate changes that you suffer from, they were playing in deep heat, this weekend. Next weekend, it's going to be a lot colder back home.
Well, it's in Indiana. We have a saying in Indiana, wait 10 minutes and it can change.
Okay.
Next week, we don't know what the weather is, but hey, in South Bend, Indiana, it could snow in July. You can never tell.
Yeah, well, what we say here in Ireland, Len, is you don't like the weather, wait a few minutes and it'll change.
That's the same thing here, but hey, it doesn't matter. When you win, you're not going to feel the elements. Sometimes the players like to play in the elements because, it just gives them a little bit of an adrenaline rush. But hopefully the weather will cooperate. We're getting to the latter part of September, so we hope the temperatures will be crisp and fall-like and up in the upper 60s. It's going to be a night game on national television, and so a very late night for the media and the football players. But throw out the weather, everybody's going to be hyped up for the game next week, and that's the most important thing, is to stay unbeaten. Yeah,
it'll be starting at midnight our time for any of our listeners that want to tune in on TV.
Well, we've got some Dublin alumni over there, and I know they're going to be trying to find a place to watch the football game. It's going to be a late night and early morning for our friends over there.
For sure. Yeah, it's going to finish somewhere about 3 to 4 a.m., I think.
And it always helps if there's a victory.
Yeah, that does make things an awful lot sweeter. But it's going very well so far, 4-0. I mean, if I had told you last month that Notre Dame were going to be 4-0, you'd said, yep, I'll take that.
I tell you, I really thought going into this game they could possibly be 3-1. So they've exceeded my expectations and a lot of people's expectations. But at the University of Notre Dame, they expect you to win every game because of the storied tradition. And right now, as you mentioned, Declan, this is the best start since the 2015 season. We hope it goes back to the 2011-2012 season where Notre Dame did go to the national championship game. But you have to take each game day by day, as far as practice and game by game, but a huge test coming up this Saturday with a Stanford team that Notre Dame has struggled with over the past couple of years, mainly at their place. But coming back to Notre Dame Stadium, there's a little bit of a confidence, and usually when you play at home, you give yourself maybe a 7-point advantage.
Do you have a lot of faith in this roster yourself? Because they've impressed me just by the reports I've been reading about them.
I think they impressed me because they were able to take the coaching that they had during the week, and they're looking to continue to improve. These are student athletes, the brightest in the country, and they know what is expected of them. But Declan, as we talked about last week, I think the best thing that happened to this club was to go on the road, a chance to relax, to get out of the rhythm. I mean, they've been doing this since early August, the same regiment. So when you get on the road, you have a chance to relax. You go into your hotel room and you've got some time to yourself. You can rest. And that's the one thing that I saw yesterday. It was a relaxed group of football players. They got sleep. They gave them a change of scenery. And they went out there, did their job, and after the game got back on the plane and got back in the South Bend that evening.
Yeah, no, that is important. I mean, and you did mention the fact that there's an awful lot of commitments, certainly, to broadcast outlets, both within the South Bend area and further afield, that they have to live up to when they are the host team for a game.
Well, they said the three toughest jobs in the world are the Pope, the President of the United States, and the quarterback at the University of Notre Dame. And I don't know how these student athletes do it, but after you do it for a while, you become accustomed to it. But it's always nice to have a few minutes to yourself, and that was the big thing yesterday, is Notre Dame did get a chance to catch their breath, go out and play the football that they were expected to play, and then just build on it. There are still some things that they need to work on, but if you can continue to improve week by week, that's just going to make you a better team toward the end of the season. Just
as an observation, I mean, it's not necessarily applicable to American football, but it is to the wider American university sports experience. I've noticed from interviewing athletes who have been to the United States for a year or a semester to play a sport on a scholarship and then return to this country, they are so easy to interview compared to some of their colleagues who never left this island. It's unreal, and it's a real pleasure to actually interview those athletes because they are so easy to interview.
Well, it's not just playing football. Sports Information, they do media training with the players because you are a representative of that university, and that is a public relations vehicle. Yeah. And I know Ellen Gunning would probably agree with me on this.
Oh, for sure.
That you want the players to represent the university, because if you're articulate and you come across well, that is going to be seen by other student athletes and say, hey, I want to do the same thing that individual is doing. But they teach them how to control an interview, and we've been in locker rooms after games where it's tough to interview players, especially after a tough loss, and these individuals are trained in that as well, and I'm very impressed by the student athlete at Notre Dame and a lot of colleges around the United States.
Yeah, as I said, I've noticed them in another sport that we play here that is also played at college level in the United States, that these athletes that come back here, they're so easy to interview. And some of my favourite interviews have been with people who've had that American broadcast experience and that media training that goes with it. And as I said, it's been fantastic to experience that as a broadcaster and be able to avail of it here on my show. Now, speaking of which, we do have some audio clips to bring to our audience. First up, Notre Dame quarterback Ian Book was asked if he was nervous in starting his first game.
I think it's good to have nerves. We actually talk about that. You should be a little nervous, but we know, week in and week out, our preparation has got us ready, and there shouldn't be anything you should be worried about or be anxious about. We're confident, and we know week in and week out we've had a great week of preparation, and we're ready to play.
That's a young man who sounds like he has his act together.
Very articulate individual. And was he nervous? Yeah, this was his first start since last year when he filled in for Brandon Wimbush at the North Carolina game in Chapel Hill. But he has played in every game this year in special situations, but he also came in last New Year's Day to replace Brandon Wimbush and led the Fighting Irish to a victory over LSU in the Citrus Bowl. So he is very articulate. He knew what he needed to do, and he got the job done.
Now, some people think that the pressure is on you when you're starting a game, but if you are, shall we say, the relief quarterback, to borrow a phrase from baseball, where you're put into a specific situation to execute that situation, that can be more difficult than starting the actual game.
It is, and that's why they've got the mentality called next man in, because at any second you might be called upon to come into a certain situation. At the University of Michigan, they call it sudden change, where if you need to come in during a situation, you have to prepare for that. And some teams prepare. What happens if there's a turnover on the goal line? Or what happens if we have the ball back and we need to get it down less than 2 minutes to score to win the ball game? So sudden change, next man in, that type of mentality is actually coached and taught and practiced throughout the week.
Now, we're going to listen now to Brian Kelly, and he was asked about starting Ian Book as quarterback against Wake Forest.
You know, I didn't sleep great last night because that's a pretty big decision to make when you're 3-0 and your quarterback that was leading your football team was, 13-3 as a starter. So, but had a lot of confidence in Ian, and I thought our offense played to the level that I thought it was capable of. That certainly showed itself today.
Yeah, of course the points amassed by the offense by Notre Dame was quite remarkable. But as you said, the defense were absolutely outstanding, certainly for the first 3 quarters. And I think that was the foundation on which the victory was probably sealed.
Yes, if you can keep the offense out of the end zone, you're going to win games. And Notre Dame did that yesterday. But Brian Kelly, he rolled the dice. That was a tough decision to make. Brandon Woodbush was 3-0 as a starter, and you're going with somebody who has not started a game since last year. And so if the Irish didn't win, he would be under the microscope, a lot of pressure, and a lot of people have been calling for his head. But it worked out very well. But is this going to be a controversy? The thing that they need to do is to keep Brandon Woodbush engaged. He is going to play a lot of football for the rest of the season.
Sure.
But right now, you just need to keep his confidence up because basically he was 3-0, and now you're taking his starting job away. And so that's probably going to be the biggest challenge next week is how you can keep that young man engaged, enthusiastic. But I think, as you mentioned, anything can happen. And that next man in mentality, Ian Book can get hurt, and you need Brandon Wimbush, and you need to have his head in the ballgame.
And American football, to its credit, was one of the first sports to engage in what we now call video analysis. And there's a danger that if, as you said, Brandon's offense is seen as one-dimensional, by putting Ian in instead of him against Wake Forest, he changed it up a bit. And you never know what Ian's going to do next.
Exactly, but that's why you need to say this is a team effort, and the goal is to win a national championship. You can't do that with just individuals. You need to do that as a cohesive team. And so I think Brandon Woodbush, and knowing him and talking to him, he'll know that, hey, he wants to do what's best for the team. Would he like to be out there on the field? Of course he would. But if Notre Dame is going to win ball games and it's going to be Ian Book at quarterback, the number one fan right now is going to be Brandon Woodbush.
Now, we're going to listen to Coach Brian Kelly talking about the play of his defence in the win by the Fighting Irish.
I thought we were relentless up front. We were physical. Every time they threw the ball, there was pressure on the quarterback. It's a difficult offense to defend in its entirety, but I thought that we were smart in what we gave them, if you will, and what we took away. Now,
let's call this game. Notre Dame are ranked number 8, Stanford ranked number 7. But, as you say, Stanford can be a bit flaky, and it is home advantage. You'd have to favour Notre Dame given it's in their own ballpark.
You would probably have to favor Notre Dame with the momentum going into this ball game, and the ratings will come out on Tuesday. I look for Notre Dame to jump up to number 6 in the country. Stanford found a way to win, and good teams find a way to win. So I look at them maybe staying at number 7 or maybe dropping down to number 8, but Stanford is much like Notre Dame. It's a private institution, high academics, very good athletics. They recruit the same type of athlete. This is going to be a broadcaster's dream, Declan, and it's probably going to go down to the final seconds, and those are the games that we love as broadcasters, don't we?
Indeed we do. Tight games where both sides play well, and it can come down to literally a single score, a touchdown or a field goal, as the case may be. They're the sort of games we really like to see.
And that's an advantage, as Notre Dame has a very good kicker named Justin Yoon. He is on the verge of breaking the all-time Notre Dame scoring record. They didn't need him yesterday, except for the point-after-touchdown kicks. But as you said, if it comes down to a field goal, we've got a kicker with the golden toe who plays for the Golden Dome.
And that point after touchdown business keeps his eye in for the bigger fish later on, like the big 3-pointers that are going to be required at some point going forward.
every point is valuable, and right now just Notre Dame knows that they have a very solid kicker that if it comes down to a game situation, they're very confident that he is the individual who's going to help them win that game.
Len, we're going to leave it there for this week. Thank you so much for joining us again, and we look forward to hearing about the big game with Stanford on next week's show.
We'll talk to you next Sunday.
And that's all we have time for on the Notre Dame slot. Now we're going to bring you our third song of the day. This is from Justin Hayward and John